The beloved Jet Set nightclub in the Dominican Republic, Santo Domingo, ended in unthinkable horror. Nearly 100 were killed and over 150 injured when the nightclub's roof collapsed during a live concert. The venue, a popular hotspot for music lovers, was packed with hundreds of people. Among them were politicians, athletes and prominent locals. They had come together to unwind, dance and enjoy a performance by one of the Dominican Republic's most
Atleast Jet Set nightclub, once a popular live music venue, now stands. The death toll in the devastating roof collapse at a nightclub in the Dominican Republic has risen to nearly 200. Rescue teams continue their search amid growing despair as families gather for a second day, desperate for news about their missing loved ones. The tragic incident occurred on Tuesday night at the Jet Set nightclub in Santo Domingo. The collapse happened during a merengue concert, sending shockwaves across the country. By Wednesday, authorities confirmed that 200 people had been declared dead, with the toll feared to rise. Crowds of anxious family members have remained outside the wreckage site and the country's forensic institute, clinging to hope while sharing identification details with the police. More than a day after the disaster, several people are still missing. Manuel Mendez, head of the Dominican Republic's Emergency Operations Center, addressed the media on Wednesday. He confirmed that rescue operations were ongoing, but no one has been found alive since Tuesday. Mendez emphasized the commitment of the rescue teams, saying, and I quote, "We are not going to abandon anyone. Our work will continue," end quote. But he also acknowledged the grim reality. Hopes of finding survivors under the rubble are now fading fast. Adding to this, presidential spokesperson Homero Figueroa said a transition is underway from a search and rescue mission to a body recovery operation. He noted, and I quote, "In the coming hours, there will be a transition from a search and rescue phase to the recovery of the body's phase," end quote. The exact number of people who were present inside the nightclub at the time of the collapse remains unclear. However, emergency services have confirmed that at least 155 people have been pulled from the debris and rushed to hospitals for treatment. Visuals from the scene show rescue workers tirelessly sifting through the wreckage, with hopes diminishing and pressure mounting. The collapsed Jet Set nightclub, once a popular live music venue, now stands as the site of one of the country's deadliest peacetime tragedies. As the nation mourns and families demand answers, questions are already being raised about the structural safety of the building and how such a catastrophic failure could occur during a crowded public event. Stay tuned for more updates on this developing story.
And enjoy a performance by one of the Dominican Republic's most cherished artists, Robbie Perez. But the music was abruptly silenced as concrete, metal and wooden beams came crashing down on those beneath. Among the victims was former MLB pitcher Octavio Dotel, a national sports hero, and Nelsie Cruz, the governor of Monte Cristi. 69-year-old Robbie Perez also died in the tragedy, while her saxophonist was killed instantly in the collapse. According to reports, Perez's daughter, who was in attendance, managed to save herself after the roof collapsed, but her father couldn't. There were no warnings. In haunting footage taken just moments before the collapse, people were seen laughing, chatting and dancing. Then a faint comment from an attendee. Something fell from the ceiling. Seconds later, a loud rumble, darkness, and the frantic screams of people crying. For 12 hours after the incident, rescue teams clawed through the rubble, desperate to find survivors. At least 400 rescuers joined the frantic search, and authorities reported hearing faint sounds under the debris, hopeful signals that not everyone was lost. Families clung to that hope.
and those did.
President Luis Abinader, visibly shaken, arrived on the scene to comfort grieving families. He promised that rescue operations would continue until not a single person remains under that rubble.
The main objective is still to save lives, which is what they're doing. Since last night, we've been following minute by minute this tragedy so that all the resources, government emergency institutions can be available as they have been.
Outside the club, anguished relatives stood in prayer. Some crying and some silent in shock.
We are concentrating in getting the people out, being able to rescue them, the people who are alive, to take them to different hospitals. Later, we will provide preliminary information on what they're doing. Since last night, we've been following minute by minute this tragedy so that all the resources, government emergency institutions can be available as they have been. But we still have a way to go. We have trust in God that we will still rescue more alive from these ruins.
Determined what caused the sudden collapse. Jet Set issued a statement expressing deep pain and dismay, promising full cooperation with the investigation. But for the families who lost their loved ones, no statement can ever fill that void. A night that began with rhythm and laughter ended in devastation. It turned the stage of celebration into one of mourning. And as the Dominican Republic struggles to process this national tragedy, the sorrow of those who danced their last dance in joy remains etched in the hearts of a grieving nation.
Including former Blue Jays pitcher Octavio Dotel, who is one of the confirmed fatalities. Crews believe there may still be people trapped under the rubble. The cause of the collapse remains unclear.
Set up is the staging area. This is where you get the media briefings, you get an update on what's happening. That's where we're getting those updates on the death toll. Right over here is an area which is a little bit closer to the scene. I want to get a little closer before I show you the Jet Set nightclub. And again, I mean, this nightclub is sort of a place for the who's who of the Dominican Republic. And that's why when you look at the death toll, you have people like the governor of a local province here. You have former Major League Baseball players that were here. And Monday nights is when they have their largest event of the week. The Jet, which is right here, right behind me, is here in the Dominican Republic, and that connection that they have with the United States. This is the entrance of the Jet Set nightclub. Currently, you see it's completely blocked off. The wall for the entrance is still up, but right behind it, if you take a look at the crane, right behind it is all that rubble. There are times when they're bringing bodies out, and they there's if you move over here, you can see these are just some of the family members that are waiting here to hear if their loved one has been found. During the overnight hours, as I mentioned, this search has been ongoing since the moment that this took place. They haven't stopped searching. And since the moment that this happened, they've been able to find a couple people to take them to the hospital, but for the most part, unfortunately, it's just bodies that they're recovering at this point. Carol?
Just remarkable, Christian, and our hearts go out to them.
Tonight, the Santo Domingo Republic investigating this devastating roof collapse at a popular nightclub that has now left at least 66 people dead and more than 160 wounded. Video circulating online showing what appears to be the moments before the roof came crashing down around 12:30 a.m. This man pointing at the roof, saying something fell. That singer performing on stage also looking up. Within seconds, the collapse and screams as the video goes dark. In another video, this group rushing away from the dance floor moments before the tragic accident. The images from the aftermath are graphic. Bodies on top of the rubble. Just behind them, a man and woman apparently trapped. First responders scaling slabs of concrete across the club floor. You can see what was the bar. The scope of the devastation seen from above. Authorities using heavy machinery to dig through the debris. Hours later, this man pulled out of the destroyed club on the stretcher, alive. The staggering death toll climbing all day as we learn more about the victims that include a saxophonist playing with the band at the time of the collapse, politicians, and athletes. World Series champion and former pitcher for the Houston Astros, New York Yankees, and New York Mets.
Search and rescue that's ongoing. Just to sort of give you a sense and set the scene for you of what's happening here. A majority of the folks who are here over to my left, and you can see these tents that are back there. These are families, for the most part, who are waiting to hear if their loved one was found underneath the rubble in the Jet Set nightclub, what's left of the Jet Set nightclub. It's quite a heart-wrenching scene. We spoke to a family who told us that last night their loved one was heard within the rubble, that someone was able to communicate with them via cell phone and eventually sort of locate the general direction of where they were at, but that today they haven't heard from them. We spoke to another, a young lady, about 16 years old. She told us that she's waiting to hear about her cat. A young lady, about 16 years old, she told us that she's waiting to hear about her cat, about her stepmother, about her aunts and her cousins. So just to give you a sense of the mood here, it goes sort of through waves, where you've got folks here who hang on to hope, and then all of a sudden you'll hear people crying, or you'll hear someone who is, you'll hear street, because people will find out that their loved one, perhaps may have been found inside the rubble. This is as close as we can get to the scene here. You can see the heavy machinery that is currently being used. Here, right behind me, that have been praying throughout the day, just hoping for a miracle at this point. As time goes on, it gets more and more difficult. We spoke to the Minister of Health here in the Dominican Republic. He told us he currently has a list of about 80 people that are considered unaccounted for. That means that people have shown up here, whether it's family members or friends, and have said, hey, listen, I can't find this person, and they were here last night. So it's quite a difficult scenario to see, and you can't imagine what these poor families are going through as they're holding on to hope and just watching the crews that keep going. They've been working here, Reed, non-stop, over 24 hours since the tragedy took place. They haven't taken a break, and they're still going at it.
Yeah, we can see some of them just using buckets to get through that debris, as we saw there on the front lines, those outstretched arms.
Toll is expected to climb even higher. Now that this is a recovery mission, crews are able to move quicker in order to be able to find and identify the bodies. In fact, we spoke to a woman that yesterday had been waiting here all day to hear about her family, and this morning she got the word that their bodies had been recovered, and she credits that to the quicker recovery mission. There's heartbreak outside the Jet Set nightclub in the Dominican Republic, where hundreds of people have descended looking for their loved ones.
So we have no idea where he's been, how he is. I think he's still in there.
Today is Shailene Peña's birthday. Her father, Maximo Peña,
is missing. He sent her this video of merengue singer Ruby Perez on stage at the nightclub just minutes prior to the collapse.
My dad is my hero. Like, I can't live without him. Sorry. He was really important to me, and I'm not prepared for anything that isn't hugging him right now.
Her stepmom, aunt, and cousins are all missing, presumed to be underneath the rubble. Officials say they do not yet know what caused the collapse that took at least 218 lives, including former MLB players Octavio Dotel and Tony Blanco.
We always keep hope.
Victor Atala is the Minister of Health in the Dominican Republic.
That's what keeps us searching and rescue. That's what keeps motivating the rescuers teams to keep on giving everything they got.
Yesterday, hundreds of people were here waiting to hear word about their loved ones. All of those people have now moved to the local morgue. That's where they're moving the bodies to. Nate, it's unclear how many more people could be buried underneath the rubble.